Faith is so important in our lives and in our walk with God. We'd like to focus on three types of faith today from three different great men in the Bible. They all have different ways that they express their faith. Um, I'd like to start with Daniel, his consistency, his challenges, and his reward. The story of Daniel is pretty much he was appointed in King Darius's kind of court, and he was very prosperous because, and everyone was jealous of him because he was always so perfect. He never messed up. He always did everything right. He always followed King Darius's orders just right. And so they wanted to basically get rid of him. They didn't want him anymore because he was showing them up so much. And so they came up with this plan. They knew he was a very strong Christian, and he always prayed 3 times a day to God. And so they proposed something to King Darius, who said that there should be a law saying that anyone who worships any other god or anyone other than King Darius will be thrown into the lion's den. And King Darius signed this law, not knowing that they were planning against Daniel. After signing this law, you cannot take this law back. Daniel was one of the king's good friends, you could say, because Daniel was always at the king's side and always helping the king out. After signing this, Daniel found out, and he prayed just as always. He didn't change his routine. He knew that God would keep him safe enough to keep going and that he would not be hurt. Well, so he sat down to pray, and they caught him, and he was thrown into the lion's den. Although King Darius did not want him to, because King Darius could not take back the law, he was thrown in. And the next day, Daniel came out and he said, "I'm alive, God saved me, he sent his angels and closed the lion's mouth." King Darius was overjoyed, and the men who plotted against Daniel were thrown in and killed before they even touched the ground. So, I'd like to dive a little deeper. Daniel 6:10. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. He prayed so often it had obviously become a habit. He did it anyways because he knew that he would not be hurt. God would reward his faithfulness. He knew his God was more important than the king's law, more important than his job, for he knew if he was caught he would be killed or fired, probably killed. He knew that God would always provide for him. It says, just as he had before, meaning Daniel was consistent. Daniel put God first and had already put God in his schedule before anything else. Daniel didn't change his habits. He didn't hide. He didn't sneak away and pray. When he learned that this decree had been signed, he had a set time. It was already in his schedule. He did it first before all else. He stepped out even with the danger. Daniel 6:19 through 22. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den, after Daniel was thrown in. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" You see, Daniel had so much faith and so much trust in God that it rubbed off on King Darius. King Darius knew that his God would save him. He knew that his God had so much love for him that he would not be hurt. Even though Darius wasn't in a relationship with God. When Daniel was doing his devotionals, it showed through how very much he trusted God. He knew how much God loved him, and God had showed through to Darius. Daniel answered, "O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king." Daniel had no wounds, not even one, not from even hitting the ground. He was so protected by God that he. Okay. Daniel had done nothing wrong in God's eyes. The Bible tells us to follow the law of the land, but God is the creator of the universe. We set the laws upon his land. He knows before us. He knows what we should do and what would be the good thing to do and the right thing to do. And so Daniel trusted God to keep him safe. The men who had accused Daniel were eventually thrown in and killed before they touched the ground. Okay. Daniel 6:23. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. God sometimes gives us trials, or uses our trials, for his glory, to bring glory to his name and to show people who don't know him who he really is. Honestly, we should be glorifying him every single day because of how many awesome things he's done for us and how amazing he is. But we don't. So God uses our trials and uses our mess-ups and our mistakes to bring glory to his name and to bring people to him. Our faith may be tested, but God will always come through. His love will always be spread through our faith.
Abraham's faith was tested many times by God, without questioning God's plan for him. Abraham once led his family out of the land he owned and lived in, followed God, and led him to a new land. Abraham did not ask why, he just packed up his stuff and left. Another story in which Abraham's faith was really tested was when they had their son Isaac, the son of Abraham and Sarah, the gift, a miracle from God, and take him to a mountain and sacrifice him. Abraham still didn't question God's plan. If it wasn't for the angel God sent down, Isaac would have been dead. We are all too young to realize to have kids, or at least I hope so. But we don't understand giving up a kid or a son. But think of giving up your favorite hobby or something just for God. So when Abraham obeyed God's plan, he had a sacrificial faith. Abraham's faith pleased God because he never questioned him. In Genesis 15:6, Abraham believed in the Lord, and the Lord counted him as righteousness because of his sacrificial faith.
Hebrews 11:24-28 tells us that Moses had a strong walk of faith, but he had to overcome his fears along the way. For example, Moses was always afraid to talk to Pharaoh on his own, so he always made Aaron go with him. But he eventually got over his fear and talked to Pharaoh alone. When God told Moses to go back to Egypt, he was afraid that Pharaoh might kill him. But he overcame his fear and focused on God's plan instead. Moses had to have faith in God to step out in the Red Sea in order for it to part. When he overcame his fear, he led the Israelites to freedom. God can use us in many ways, no matter what. God used Moses even after he killed a man to lead the Israelites to freedom. Overall, Moses would have never accomplished these many things that he did without stepping out in faith. We will never experience what God has planned for us and never grow in our Christian walk and relationship with God if we don't step out in faith.